In this part of the tutorial, we're going to look at adding some basic user input to our battle system. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get this cursor moving from left to right. So we're going to be able to toggle between fight and run. And then we're also going to learn how to bind the action to the enter key. So when we press the enter key, what's going to happen is we're going to put some text up here in the top left, which is going to say whether or not we selected fight or run in the menu. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that, and you're going to see that it's actually quite simple in RPGWizard to handle user input like this. So in this tutorial, we're specifically looking at user input on a keyboard level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the battle system program that we have here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all our drawing code, so everything down from here to the render now. I'm going to put this inside a JavaScript function called draw. So I'm going to declare the function draw, and then I'm going to open a curly bracket and then close one down here. I'm just going to indent all this code, and this is basically we've taken all our drawing code for drawing the menu and we've put it inside a function, which is going to allow us to call that function anytime we need to update the menu UI. So that's the first reason. Okay, another thing that we also need to do is we need to make the location of the cursor. So that's currently set here, the X and Y of that cursor. We need to set those through a variable instead. That's because what we're going to do is we're going to, when the user clicks the left or the right arrow, we're going to update the location of the cursor, and then we're going to call draw. So we're just going to use a variable to hold that for us. So I'm just going to create two variables. I'm going to call them cursor X set that to 0 for a second, and then I'm going to set cursor Y to. Now I'm going to set those values to the left position by default, so 250 and 383. So if we just run this code now, so if I update these variables and I run this code now, what we're going to get is we're actually not going to see the menu at all. So I'm just going to run. What's going to happen now is you see there's no menu. Why is that? That's because we've declared the draw function, and now the code is inside the function, but we never called the draw function. So you have to make a call to draw. So if I put a call here to draw, so run the draw function, and then I do that again, I run the battle system, I get the menu. But if I hit the arrow keys, nothing's happening yet, which is expected. So in the RPGWizard, when it comes to keyboard input, you have to register a listener. So basically a function that listens to input of a key. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up a listener on the left and right arrow keys. So I'm just going to type RPG code register. Okay, so register key. So you're going to see that there's two types of function, and we could kind of use either one, but we're going to use the down one. So basically what key down does, it means the moment that the key is pressed down, it will call the code that we give it to for the key that we tell. And similarly for up, it would be the moment the key is released, you would call some different code. So you might have an action that when the user is holding down, like pushing a block, and then when they lift the key up, they stop pushing that block. So that's why you might use it. So we're just going to use register key down. And there's three parameters to that. The first one is the actual key. So I'll point to the list of keys in the description. So there's a long list of keys that the RPGWizard accepts, and you can find them on the RPGWizard wiki. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to point towards that in the description. So I already know the keys. So for example, for the left arrow key, it's just left arrow. And for the callback, so basically what the callback is, it's the code that we want to run when the user presses this key. So I'm just going to declare a function inside here as a callback. I'm going to leave it empty for now, because I want to talk about this thing called the global scope. So basically, all you need to know about global scopes at the minute is we're going to set this to false. What it does is it means that if the key is registered false, when you provide it false, it means that this key registration only lasts as long as this program lasts. So the moment this program ends, the key listener is removed, and the left arrow key won't run the code anymore. But if you set it to true, that means the key listener lives beyond just the program, and it will run in the game until you unregister that key. So that's useful for things that you want to have that maybe like a sword slash on an action battle system, or a clock or something like that. Something you want to always be running and always be listening for the key. So that's left arrow. So I'm just going to copy and paste. I'm going to just go right arrow too. Okay. So in terms of the keys, if you go to the RPGWizard wiki, you can find under the wiki section, you can find a list of keys. So it's somewhere here on the wiki. I'm just looking for it. I think it's under user input. So yeah, if you go into the user input wiki and you look for a list of supported keys, you'll get a name for all the keys. And so you want to use the name on the left, like numpad 8 or F8 or something like that. And that gives you all the keys on the keyboard and how to listen to them. So going back to the RPGWizard, what we want to do when the user presses the left arrow key, we want to set the location of the cursor, and we want to update the menu. So basically for this, I'm going to copy the values here, and then you want to call draw. We want to call draw because we want to update the UI to reflect the cursor movement. So I've already figured out the positions for the right arrow, so I'm just going to copy them. Okay, so I'm just going to copy those. And so basically when we hit the right arrow, it's going to update the X and Y, and then it's going to call draw. So if I run this now, okay, so you're going to see one issue here. Now we have two cursors. It updated it, but it left the other cursor behind, basically is what happened. So what we actually need to do here is we need to, in the draw function, we need to tell it to clear the canvas first. So we basically need to say clean the UI and then update the new state. Otherwise, we'll see the two arrows. So you need to call clear canvas and remove the canvas ID because we're not using a custom canvas. Basically, all that's going to do is clear the canvas first, and then it's going to draw all the new graphics. So I ran the wrong program. I ran the wrong program there. So I just need to run the stop battle. And now that I'm running stop battle, you'll see the cursor moves. So that's a pretty quick and dirty way to get some kind of animation on the UI, is to clean the whole UI and redraw the whole thing. That's not the most efficient way to do it. You could clear sections of the UI and redraw only the part that's changed, but for our purposes, this works fine. So the next thing we want to do is we want to draw, when the user presses enter, we want to draw the action that the user selected in the top left. So to do that, what I'm going to start with is I'm going to define a variable called action. I'm just going to call it action. And I'm going to set it by default to the fight action. So defaults to fight. Okay. And basically what we want to do is if they've hit the left arrow, and which means they've got the fight action selected in our case, I want to, for the action variable, ensure that it has fight set. So I'm just using a string here to represent the action. So a piece of text. And this similarly for the right arrow, I want to set it to run. Okay, so that pretty much covers that. And the next thing we need to do is we need to add another key down listener, and we need to listen to the enter key. So I'm just going to duplicate the right one, and I'm just going to replace this with enter, which is the value for the enter key. And what we're going to do here is we want to kind of remove all this. Now I'm just going to copy something that I did already. Okay, so it's a pretty simple piece of code. All it's going to do is it's going to draw the action, the value of the action at the position 40, 40, and then it's going to render the canvas. So, okay, so this all should work. If I run the stat battle, now if I go between the two and I hit enter, you'll see fight appear in the top. And when I move off it, fight disappears because the canvas is being cleared. And I hit get run. Fight and run. So that's basic user input with the keyboard. So what we're going to do with this next is we're actually going to add an enemy to this battle system. And when the user hits enter on fight, we're going to have the enemy play its defend animation, so as if it was attacked. So that's kind of what we'll cover in the next tutorial. And I will link the programs used in this tutorial into the description, and also the link to that wiki page as well.